Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lambert, and on this channel we talk Kanye West. And this video is part 2 of our discussions over the Kanye contract reveal or exposure on Twitter and what we've learned from the contract. So in the first video, we went over a complex article by Sean Sitaro talking about kind of the bigger picture stuff that he saw. Next, we have a post from Volf1234, and you can see that Volf just graduated from a pretty decent law school and has taken the bar. And while they were in law school, contracts were my shit, and I managed to work at two fairly big companies, writing, negotiating, and analyzing contracts for them. So more of a legal background, where Sitaro, while he is well versed in hip hop, is still just kind of a hip hop journalist, right? So a little different perspective on this, and you can tell it's very thorough. Kanye fans, and specifically like people that post on West Sub Ever, tend to be very thorough. So we're going to go through some of the main points of this post and kind of look at what we learned from this, because there's some different insights that we get. So as you can see here, well, to start off, we get a lot of insight into the financial management of how a Kanye record is made, distributed, funded. I would say the majority of these pages that Kanye tweeted related to the funding of albums, reallocation of album funds for other albums, and other production costs that either Kanye was responsible for or what Def Jam was responsible for. There are a lot of X's and O's relating to financial management that I think would cause severe boredom for a lot of us West Sub Ever users who just want to know when Donda is dropping. So I'll focus largely on the copyright ownership aspect of this agreement, since that seems to be Ye's biggest concern. So number one, Ye entered into a film agreement in 2012 for the Kanye West Presents Cruel Summer. We talked about that in the Sitaro article. It had gone $1.5 million over budget, and it was a movie that only really ever played at a couple film festivals and never released. There's no actual full leak of the movie online, which is kind of wild that it cost as much as it did without ever having any kind of release. Like, you can't even recoup money via YouTube, right? So the agreement also included provisions regarding Kanye's sixth studio album. I'm guessing this is Yeezus, since the number albums seem to refer to individual Ye works and not collaboration albums. Yeah, Cruel Summer and Watch the Throne seem to have their own separate agreements, right? So Ye was working with a sixth album fund, which was originally funded with $12 million. $8 million was paid to Ye as an execution advance, which is what Sitaro had pointed out. That Ye took home once he signed the contract. $1 million was allocated toward the Cruel Summer film, and $640,000 was used in connection with making the Cruel Summer album. There was a third investor into the film named Duha Film Institute. It is curious because in the Complex article, Sean pointed out that Yeezus had gone $1.5 million over budget, but also that the Cruel Summer movie went $1.5 million, and that Cruel Summer went $1.3 million over budget. So that seems separate from the $4 million that was the production budget for Yeezus, after the $8 million had been taken out from the 12 for the advance. So if from that $4 million for Yeezus, $1.1 million was for the Cruel Summer movie, and another $640,000 was made for the Cruel Summer album, that leaves you with what, like $2.5 million for the production of Yeezus. I do wonder if there is some what would you say, confusion over the budgeting between Yeezus and Cruel Summer, and like which article is more accurate in terms of what went over and where the sources of the budget were. An interesting point to make is that Yeezus seemed to go over its budget, and Def Jam and Kanye agreed that Def Jam would deduct $1 million from the back end. This is what Kanye was talking about when he tweeted that labels hide money in recoupable costs that never get recouped because of all the back-end expenses: marketing, clearing samples, releasing. It also seemed that they allocated funds from his seventh album to pay for excess. That was something that Sitaro didn't go over either, was did funds from the seventh album get allocated to the overages from the sixth album? All Sitaro pointed out was that the overall budget for The Life of Pablo was less, coming in at $6 million versus the $12 million for Yeezus. Kanye is explicitly allowed to maintain a website which sells merch and copies of the records bearing the same album artwork. This is how we have KanyeWest.com, which sells the vinyls and merch for the albums. There just seems to be like a way for Kanye to have his own revenue stream from it, even though he doesn't have the masters. So he can sell the CDs himself rather than people buying them in the stores, which I think he gets a different percent split on, right? So he would get maybe more of a majority if bought through KanyeWest.com. This one clause is present, or maybe it's just because it allows him to bundle or sell other things like... This one clause is present in a lot of agreements and is very telling as to Kanye's limited rights once the album was out. The contract reads, all master recordings recorded during the term which embody the performances of artists from the inception of the recording and all artwork created for use alongside the recording, and all copyrights, all renewals, extensions shall be entirely Rockefeller's property. This is an extremely telling clause that tells you how little rights Kanye had. When you sign away all copyright to an album, then you basically have no control over your own artwork. This means that Kanye would get a cut of royalties. Would get cut a royalties check. Okay, thank you. He would get cut a royalties check for money that the record made, according to how the parties agreed. But it also means that Ye has no control over who can use his music, how his music is used, how his music is marketed, distributed, etc. Additionally, copyright allows artists to take back their copyrighted material through a renewal period allowed for in the Copyright Act of 1976. My impression was that an artist could not sign away any renewal rights in a copyrighted work. Renewal rights basically say that an artist may be able to take back control of their material after a certain amount of time, subject to a new agreement given the other party the second term of the copyrights. I'm not positive on this aspect, but it is nonetheless shady to force Ye to give up future renewals for his copyrighted work, considering that they don't even happen until 28 years after the work was created, licensed. Yeah, you think about that for a second. In a normal world, Kanye would have his renewals, right? He might have to give up first copyright, but he would have the opportunity to, bargain or negotiate for the renewal and might even get ownership back at that point, which would mean that Rockefeller, Def Jam, whoever would have 28 years of control. It's been almost 20 years since the release of The College Dropout. So we're looking at, 12 more years before Kanye would be able to get... No, that's not right. It's been 20... Wait, what? It's been almost 20? How many years has it been? 16 years. Yeah, so another 8 years. 8 years. Okay. No, that's not right either. Oh my God. Why am I so bad at math right now? 2004 to 2020 is 16 years, and it's 28 years. So 12 more years. I was right the first time. So 12 more years. And he would be able to own the masters, The College Dropout, because he has no renewal or extension rights at all. He just has no right to reclaim the album ever. And that's something that we saw in the Complex article, that Kanye has no rights to the first 5 albums, but he has 20 years wait before he can get the masters to the 6th and 7th album, and 7 years for the 8th, 9th, and 10th album. Okay. There are certain provisions which state that the RAF, Rockefeller, could not release any cutouts, songs that didn't make the cut, for 24 months after the album's release. So if Kanye had songs that didn't make the cut for Graduation, he might never want those songs to see the light of day, but Rockefeller could say, no, you know what, we want to release them, but in the contract they would just have to wait 24 months, and then they could release whatever they wanted to release. So Volf just points out that this is telling because it essentially means that all the songs that Ye made in the lab in connection with the album were property of the label, and that they are the ones that could release the cuts, not Kanye. So if there was a song that Kanye liked that didn't make the album, he could have just dropped it himself or release it separately or do anything with it. He had no control at that point, since it was made on Rockefeller's time or on the studio time that they were paying, so they claimed ownership. And then Ye had the ability to block... Rockefeller also had the explicit rights to create a greatest hits album. Ye had the ability to block Rockefeller from including a song on a greatest hits album so long as he objected within 7 days. This is a very short amount of time in which to allow a right of first refusal and should not have been agreed to. Luckily, there haven't been any greatest hits albums, but still very shady and coercive contract practices that should have been caught. So yeah, he could say... he would have no control, I guess, over the track list or anything like that. You would hope that they would come to him and say, we want to collaborate on a greatest hits album, but it seems like they didn't need to do that if they so chose. An agreement provides the timely delivery of seventh album, which may give insight into when Ye is supposed to drop albums. For the seventh album, Ye had to give UMG the record so that it could be released in 2015, unless both parties agreed otherwise. Obviously, they did, since Life of Pablo was released February of 2016, so 2 months after 2015. This might indicate that there is no hard deadlines as to which Ye is supposed to deliver his albums, but only years in which they need to be released. There are also provisions stating that Kanye's performances must be reasonably consistent in concept and style with the master recordings. Again, a lot of control for the label and very little for Ye. Yeah, so if he just wanted to get creative with a song while in a concert, right, or doing a performance, this is saying that he can't, that he would actually be in violation of his contract if he performed it in a way that was unique. It's kind of annoying. Most of the costs of production, obtaining trademarks, blah, 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 were deemed to be advances on Ye's profits. Basically, the labels in UMG made Kanye West front-load his expenses, since if he spent in excess of the budget, they were taken away from his profits after the album dropped. Yeah, so essentially, they had to be paid back for everything. There was nothing that they spent money on that they didn't say, like, this was an advance. So if they spent for a music video, they had to be recouped before Kanye made any money. If they spent for production or trademarks or any of that, they had to be recouped before Kanye made any money. Same with marketing. Where I think if you have enough leverage or something, you could say you pay for marketing and that doesn't come out of my budget at all. But in the music industry, you don't have that language. More language restricting Kanye's ability to perform license his own music without the express consent. Kanye signed an inducement agreement, which basically really drives home the point that Kanye understood and acknowledged the terms of the previous agreements fully and has consulted with independent counsel on their provisions. This is just extra ammo for the label so that Kanye doesn't come back and say that he was coerced and didn't understand the contract. I've already seen people on Twitter talk about this, where they're saying, like, well, you can see that Kanye signed an inducement, so he knew how bad this deal was. He didn't have to sign it. He could have stopped then. Like, why did he sign it? So it's already, like, to people that don't want to, I guess, like, taking the side of the record labels, they're already using that as proof of why Kanye's wrong to challenge the contract. Kanye had different royalty rates that he was to be paid based on where the album was sold or what medium the album was sold in. Kanye made 100% the basic royalty rates, which is what the artist should be paid based on copyright law. Kanye made only 80% of royalty rate for special releases of the album. So say the basic royalty rate was $1 per album sold, right? If he sold 100 copies of the album, he'd get $100. But if they released a special version of the album, then Kanye would only get 80 cents on that, which probably, I'm guessing, is because special releases usually have some kind of additional artwork or like more to them that makes them deluxe, but also they usually cost more. So that's strange that he just doesn't still get 100%, right? He's only getting 80% at that point. And then the same thing right here. Kanye made only 80% the base royalty rate for licensing. So if the NBA or a baseball team used his song in the stadium, Kanye's only getting 80% of the base royalty for that. Also not sure why that's negotiated. This is telling because licensing is one of the main roads of profitability in records, and Kanye only brought home 80% of what he was supposed to. And then he signed a label amendment in 2016, which was to last for 2 years until March 31st, 2018. I do not see any agreements which cover 2018 to present, but I'm assuming there is one because otherwise we wouldn't be in this nightmare. I think the one point to there, I saw some people saying that Kanye sharing the contract was a breach of contract, and that these things are supposed to remain private. I do wonder if that's why it ended with the 2016 agreement, because at that point, all the previous contracts were considered like outdated or open to display or something, and it's only the present contract that's still in force that isn't breaking the terms. Or maybe his lawyer just said if you share that contract, you'll be much more liable to be sued or breach contract or something. Because I'm almost positive he was talking with his lawyer before doing this. He was sharing texts that he was having with his lawyer the day before. So I think that there would have been some conversation regarding this, which is probably why that contract then is missing. And that was it. The big takeaways I gathered from reading these arguments: unfortunately, there are no big revelations, no big release windows for Donda, and no gleaming bits of information that we can grasp at. It doesn't really go over like the lost Yeezus tapes or anything. And then I asked the question here about, Satara talked about the ownership masters portion of the contract. Do you have any thoughts on that section? And Volf said, in regards to the Complex article, I think they summarized it pretty well, and I think it's the driving force behind what Ye is after. They essentially have locked Ye down with these contracts so that he has to jump through a lot of hoops, such as the recoupment cost, which Ye was alluding to in his tweets, just to get any sort of master ownership. And even then, he won't get any sort of ownership until the initial copyright period is over. And just to remind what the recoupment cost is, say he had gone over his album budgets, or that he got that $8 million advance on Yeezus, but Yeezus only made $4 million. Then he would still owe $4 million to the label. And say that happened over the course of multiple albums, he could be, $10 million in money owed to the label. And if he wanted to buy his masters at that point, he would have to pay the $10 million first, which there has been some debate on this, because I think a lot of us just say like Kanye could afford to pay $10 million, right? Like worth 1.3 billion according to Forbes, 3.3 billion according to himself and Bloomberg. Like, dude just bought like a $40 million ranch. Like, he's doing all right. Like, Yeezys are still coming through, the Gap deal, like everything else that he's doing. He might have a lot of costs and expenses, but he's still like one of the highest paid musicians and celebrities in the world. So $10 million might not be that much. But there were some people that were speculating that he might be a little bit more like cash broke or non-liquid than what it seems. So actually having to pay the $10 million might be, out of his price range, but I still don't think so. I think if Kanye needed $10 million, Kanye could get $10 million at this point in time. Like no problem. So that's it for this post. We're going to do, what time is it? 4:26. We're going to be doing a couple more videos on this. The next one going over this Jay-Z drama that's going on, which disappeared here. This Jay-Z drama that's going on. So we'll go over that rumor. But if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support the channel, the easiest way is liking, subscribing, and commenting, as those three things tell YouTube that this is a channel people enjoy, so then they show it to more people. And then we also have a Patreon where we do our lyrical analysis podcast episodes, which is the thing that we are most well known for. There are free episodes available on Apple and Spotify. Those release one a week. But then we're releasing new episodes currently of Late Registration 2 times a week. And we're going to be getting into Graduation and 808s and Heartbreak, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. So it's going to be a long time before any of those episodes actually hit the public feed. So if you want to rock with us as those are dropping or go through our whole backlog, then the Patreon is the way to do that. And I promise it will change forever how you listen to Kanye's discography. If you want a taste, go to Apple, go to Spotify, look up Watching the Throne, and listen to one of our College Dropout episodes. But yeah, join the Patreon. Until next time, stay wavy and keep it loopy. Cheers.